All right, we should be going live any second. Let me see here. Yes, we are live on Periscope.
Hello, Periscope.
Be live on YouTube like any second, and Facebook should catch up in about 5 minutes.
Okay. For anybody out there on Periscope or YouTube, good evening. This is the BA Zone's pre-show, our live pre-show. And tonight we're going to be talking about the psychology of business analysis. And tonight it's going to be on conflict resolution. Woohoo! I just had a big conflict resolution. I was in Mexico for a week. So that seems to smooth out any conflicts you might have. I think it might be the margaritas, the sunshine, the sea. We're not exactly sure, but anyway, we're just gonna combination of it all. We're just gonna check out all our equipment. Pay no mind to the great Oz, Kathleen, behind the curtain, checking out all the hardware. And we're going to get going here in about 8 minutes, I guess.
Yeah, the pre-show is technically live, and then Facebook will be joining the pre-show in about 2.5 minutes.
There you go.
Okay. I mean, it's not like, we've ever run into projects where there was any conflict, right? We don't have any information on this at all.
No, but I got to tell you, the limo ride home from the airport, there was some major conflict because the limo driver got us into the car, and this was like perfect for this evening, actually. He got us into the car, and while he was wrestling our bags into the trunk, in Newark, we were flying into Newark, and all of the vehicles are just like flying in to load and unload. And apparently, the woman behind him decided to run over his foot, hit the suitcase.
Oh, no.
You talk about conflict resolution. I mean, it was not the right way to do it. He said, hold on just a second, and he ran over to that car and banged on that window and scared that woman to death and screamed and yelled at her. So I thought that might have not been the best way to handle that. But it was probably very effective.
Oh, sure. Well, and when you're in pain, you tend to go with the first thought you have.
Oh, yeah. So that was a scary ride home. I'm like, ooh, don't get this man upset,
Any damage to your luggage?
Not that I could see. It sort of bounces. It's on wheels. I think it was more that she almost ran the guy over.
Yeah, well, I mean, car running over your foot, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to keep your emotions in check when that happens.
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit. Just a little bit.
That would do it for me.
Mm-hmm. It was fun. We were down in Puerto Vallarta for a week. Nuevo Puerto Vallarta. We were actually staying at the Hard Rock Hotel.
Oh, cool.
So it was nice. We went out over to John Huston. The director, John Huston, used to have an island out there called Las Colitas. And he owned it, and it was only accessible by boat. So he took a ride out there, and on the way out, there was whales, and there were giant sea rays in the ocean. It was, cool. And they just kept slowing down. Everything slows down there quite a bit, so it was great. It was very good.
That's the best part about beach life.
It is. And as soon as we can get you on a vacation that gets you away from those toys of yours.
Oh, I haven't been on vacation in decades. It feels like it's been years. Well, it was before, just as Bailey was getting really sick, so it has been a very long time.
Which I took Tink to the eye doctor today. For anybody who out there is just joining us, Tinker's my little Yorkie. And
bring the pups up.
Blondie. And he's definitely got major cataracts, so I definitely have to, and they're age-related, apparently. It's nothing else going on. So I'm going to have to buy him a little crash helmet until he adapts to that. He's up there in age. It came on very fast, and that's what I was worried about. But he says, no, sometimes it's just the luck of the draw that's either a slow progression or it can be a fast progression. So, um, he says, they'll adapt. They do adapt, but I don't know. I'm going to have to
Yeah,
get,
well,
those foam things you cover your pipes with and just put them all around all the legs of the chairs and stuff until he adapts.
that's a good idea.
Yeah. Poor guy whacks his nose on a regular basis.
Yeah, poor baby.
God,
But I
poor
mean,
baby.
I
He's
will
doing all right.
say, with all the things that Bailey went through, that seemed to be the easiest for her. She adapted to that pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
She just,
This,
I just kept talking her through things, and so she
yeah.
just relied on her people to talk her through whatever environment she was in. And of course, I didn't, once I realized that she was losing her sight, I didn't move anything. So that
Mm-hmm.
she had the memory of how the house was laid out, and then when we went out, I just warned her a couple of seconds before we got to anything, and she got to be very good at it. A lot of people would meet her and not have any clue.
Really? Well,
It was funny because
there's hope then.
you couldn't really, like, cataracts, like sometimes you can really see them, but with her it wasn't that obvious. It was just that she stopped reacting to things that she usually
Yeah.
like if I dropped like a tissue or something. She was a big tissue dog. And all of a sudden, I dropped one out of my pocket, and she didn't make a move for it. I'm like, okay, that's weird. That was my first clue, because she never really walked into things all that much. It was more just because she lost the middle first, so she was good close up and she was good at a distance. But anything like in a mid range, she completely lost first, and then the rest it just kind of progressed out into.
Yeah. Yeah. Tink is really, he's pretty blind. But
Aw.
yeah,
I'm glad when you guys came home.
he was very happy. He's been by my side actually. That right now he's downstairs. He'll be up later,
Aw.
but he just wants to be right by my side all the time now. So little boo boo head.
He's so
Yeah, look at
cute.
Murphy.
And he kind of looks like that again because he got groomed a couple weeks ago.
All right, we're going to go live here. Well, we are live. I'm sorry. We're going to start with our live show, not the pre-show, in about 2 minutes. And it's on this month. We're doing the psychology of business analysis, and tonight it's on conflict resolution. What we can do to try to keep that to a minimum, or at least if it happens, that it's a healthy occurrence and not an unhealthy conflict, which seems to be most of them that you run into, that you have to kind of adjust to make them healthy without actually hurting anyone.
Yeah, I guess, well, like your driver, you've got to not react to the immediate
Yeah,
response. You have
that's
to kind
right.
of hold it back a little bit.
Take a breath. Count to 10. Yeah, relax a little bit.
Relax.
Anyway,
I'm familiar with the term.
just haven't had it in a while. I know. Just can't relax.
No, but that's life, right? Life in the big city.
It is. Life in the big city.
And for those of you who are out there and have friends, family, neighbors who might enjoy joining us or following along, you can find us here, obviously, wherever you're watching us. We are on Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. You can also go to our website, and you can, let me bring up all this stuff here. You can always catch the show there if you go to the BA Zone /watch, BAZone.com, sorry. Watch, and then you've got all of the usual places: Twitter, Instagram, Periscope, Facebook, YouTube. So please feel free to share with anybody you think might find this content helpful. And if you would like to stay on top of what we're up to, then you can follow us, or it's follow or like, depending on which environment you're in, and that way you will get notified about when we go live and all that kind of good stuff, anything new that we post, all the quality stuff.
There you go. And if you want to know what not to do for conflict resolution, you can always tape The Bachelor, which is the final show tonight. That's always, what's going on there? Just put that on pause and join us so we can get you through that too.
I have never seen one of those. I think I'm going to continue that.
Yeah. Well,
All right, it is
entertainment
9
value.
p.m. Do you want to do the official intro?
Sure. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the BA Zones live show. I'm Marianne Morrison.
And
And
I am Kathleen Sinnott over here in the background.
hey, and tonight we're going to be talking about the psychology or the psychoanalysis or whatever you want to prefer of business analysis in conflict resolution.
Be kind, she's been away.
I've been away. I've been on vacation. I was down in Mexico, and I am back from Puerto Vallarta, where I had a fantastic time. But so I'll get a little slow. So I have no conflicts at the moment because
She's
still on vacation.
And I'm the other end of it. I am stressed to hear. So between the two of us, we have the complete yin yang going.
That's right. That's right. And as it should be. So we'll try to calm Kathleen down. So basically, what is conflict? Conflict is a normal part of our life, and it arises, when people disagree based on their individual needs, their fears, their values, perceptions, motivations, and ego, and a whole bunch of other things thrown in together. And as BAs, we are almost verging on being sort of like pseudo psychiatrists or psychologists, in that we have to deal with a lot of conflict. It can occur between business analysts and developers and project managers. It can occur while you're eliciting requirements. And it can get extremely rough. Most of the time it's not, but we're going to give you a couple of pointers or steps to get you to successfully resolve conflict, enable you to do that. And part of that is knowing ourselves as well and how we deal with conflict. And conflict isn't a bad thing. It can be a very good thing if it's a healthy type of conflict, where people are exchanging ideas. They could be in heated conversation. It can go the other way, the unhealthy way, when people are sort of attacking people instead of issues and ideas. And those are some of the things you have to be aware of. So we're just going to give you a couple of steps in how to do that. And step one of that is emotional awareness. And when I say emotional awareness, I sort of mean that self-awareness that I was talking about, which is a key to understanding yourself and others. And everyone responds to conflicts based on their own personal experiences and perceptions. I, for one, did not have a lot of conflict in my family growing up. So it was a big surprise to me when there was a lot of conflict in the business world and how to deal with that. So over time, I learned how to address those types of things. So if you don't know how you feel or why you feel the way you do, you're not going to be able to interpret other people's emotions or body language or how they verbalize things to effectively communicate and resolve these conflicts. So emotional awareness and the ability to modify your behavior is really important, so that you respond instead of react. So you have to sort of know yourself. So how do you respond to conflict? Are you the type of person that avoids conflicts at all costs? Are you somebody who goes from 0 to 60 or 0 to 90 in 60 minutes or seconds? Do you freeze up or shut down and let that occur? Do you use humor to diffuse a situation? I often use humor a lot. You have to be careful how you use it, because, if someone's ready to, bite each other's head off, sometimes humor doesn't work. Sometimes it does. So you have to gauge that a little bit. But, it's all about managing your emotions to respond appropriately instead of reacting to the situation. So take a breath and figure out what your emotions are and how you react. And then you have a better idea of gauging how other people react to conflict as well. And they sort of fall into those types of categories of avoidance, going off the handle or just stepping back and getting really quiet. And you can figure out people pretty quickly in a situation. And that's the first thing: self-awareness or emotional awareness. Have anything to add to that, Kathleen?
No, other than the shock of growing that anybody grows up in a family without any conflict. You have siblings. How did you do that?
Well, I didn't realize till much later that there was some conflict. I'm just
Oh, well,
realizing it now that there might be a little, but before that, it was sort of like Brady Bunch type stuff, but there wasn't
oh
there
my
wasn't a lot
nose.
of that.
Sorry.
Yeah, we just sort of all kind of got along, and it's kind of a weird thing, but
Guys were the
it
lucky
did help. But
exception.
the lucky exception. Well, I had to learn a lot of things though as well. So some people have an advantage who come from that environment if they can keep their emotions in check. Um, so
Balancing
let's
act at
move on.
best. Okay,
It's
sure. Let's.
it is all about balance, actually. Step 2 is empathy. So when you're in a situation where there's a lot of conflict, you really have to not take sides. I mean, you may want to take sides because you see that one point might be better suited, but you really can't. You really have to put yourself in other one's shoes and recognize that everyone believes that they have legitimate needs, and they do. To them, they are legitimate needs. To the rest of the group, it may not be. But you really have to walk in their shoes. You have to be able to validate everyone's viewpoint. Everyone wants to make sure that they're being heard and that they're being listened to. You want to be supportive. You want to allow people to make mistakes, because the only way we learn is by making mistakes. So if you shut people down or say, look, I told you so type of thing, that is not going to make for a good team, a good creative environment. It's just not going to work. So you really have to be empathetic and withhold judgment and try to see everyone's point of view, because everyone has a point of view. It's sort of like everyone has a belly button, whether it matters or not. So you really have to be empathetic and come from a genuine place of empathy as well. Just try not to fake it. I know a lot of people have a problem being empathetic, but it's things to work on, right? Self-awareness and empathy. How empathetic are you, Kathleen?
Oh, very. I'm the queen of empathy.
She's
Depends on
the
the
queen.
day. Most of the
Actually,
time
Kathleen,
I am, but it depends. I'm human and I have my days.
she does. And actually, she is very good at validating everyone's viewpoint and then making sure we switch it around to the better viewpoint. But she is extremely supportive and allows people to give it their best shot without any comments. So it's a great skill set to have, empathy.
It comes from years of playing poker. That I can keep my poker face on, so they don't hear the screaming in my head.
I can hear the screaming in her head. Actually,
well,
I think my dog
well,
can
so
hear the
she
screaming.
knows all my tells, but most people don't, so it works out fine. And then I'll catch her eye, and she'll give me that look like, "Okay, keep it going."
Yeah, it's a tag team effort.
Oh, totally. We kind of scare people how well we work together. I just want to reach out. Sandeep has checked in over on YouTube, and he says we're awesome, and I think that's a lovely thing. Thank you so much. I really needed to hear that today.
Thank you. Anything we can get. We thank you very much. Thanks for listening. Okay, and if you have any questions, feel free to. Kathleen will bring them up if you send it in. So
keeping an eye on things here.
Let's go to step 3. Yep. Okay. Step 3. Let's try to find some common ground. So often, when you've got a lot of folks and they're in a conflict and everybody is screaming and trying to be heard and understand it's getting a little heated, oftentimes as business analysts, we sort of refocus everyone more on the needs and the issues of the participants and away from the individual positions or point of views that they may have on the given subject. A lot of times emotions get involved and people want what they want. And oftentimes they both want the same thing. It's just that it has to be refocused back to the needs and the issues. We have to get off the point of somebody saying, I need to have it this way. Well, we need to find out what that issue is, what that problem is, and then work up a set of solutions and try to find some common ground in that. And you often do. You often find, oh, yeah, I agree with you on that particular item. And if that doesn't work, you can reframe the issue sort of by asking questions that, in a way, will take it from the negative back to the positive and stimulate some problem solving skills that we know the participants have. It's just sort of reframing the question a little bit better to take it back to the issue and get it away from a particular point of view. And another thing to do when you're looking to find common ground is to sort of go over what you've already accomplished as a group. And it may be early on in the project, there may not be a lot, but it's always great to say, hey, look, these are the things that we've already decided on, to remind people that you actually can be productive and get some stuff done, even though you may have very different viewpoints. And it's all about working together and finding that common ground, which everybody needs to do a little more of today in this world. And it's all about refocusing, reframing, and emphasizing the good and not the negative.
This is true.
Anything?
And it's funny because I was just thinking as you were saying that, it's like, wow, that sounds like our whole world right now. Everybody would get along better if we would all just stop fighting and look for the common ground.
That's right.
But the other part is just to remember, too, that a lot of the times, that the more agitated somebody's becoming, it may or may not be about what it is that they say they're upset about. So sometimes you just need to listen a little deeper to see if maybe you can get to the actual root cause, because sometimes if you just keep trying to treat the symptom, it doesn't resolve the stress level that person is feeling. And if you can get down a little bit deeper and actually get down to the cause of it and find that common ground point on that issue, a lot of times that'll move things along much better then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, we're going to talk just a little bit more about that in step 4, which is pick your battles. So when I say pick your battles, and what we were just talking about, getting to the root cause, you don't have to win and you don't have to be right now. So you can revisit something. But a lot of times, what Kathleen was saying, the root cause of something, you really need to clarify, especially when the doom and gloom tour shows up. We can't do it this way. Well, you have to get to, why can't we do it this way? Well, we did it this way before. Okay, what was the outcome of how you did it before? And you've got to drill down and clarify and pick your battles. You can break down issues into smaller components and try to get some agreement on the smallest component. Because once you get agreement on that smallest component and agree that this is the root issue of something, then you go, oh, we have one little success here. We can move on now and try to go after a bigger piece of it. But you don't have to do it right now. You can say, okay, unless, of course, there's a time frame associated with it. But even that, you could get back to it in an hour or two the next day or towards the end of the meeting and just try to get some small successes and pick those battles and negotiate and compromise as a first step. You may have to say, okay, well, let's do it your way, this way for this piece. And then as you talk a little further on, somebody may say something and it sort of becomes a little bit more productive than it was, just getting them to agree on one little thing. So pick your battles. If you can't get to the big thing that you need right now, try starting a smaller component, getting a little forward momentum going, and do it in a positive way. Just keep redirecting them back to being positive, working together, and try to focus on the issues and clarify what is that root cause? What is that root issue? What is it all about? And, sometimes it can go back to, it can actually be something that happened in the past with these two people. That is a little harder to negotiate and navigate. But once you find that out, we have to find a way to move forward and forget about the past. And again, it all goes back to giving people the ability to make mistakes, people the ability to sort of forgive and forget, that type of thing. And I'm sure you have something more to say on pick your battles, Kathleen.
Well, actually, Sandeep has asked us a question which is perfect for this one, which is, how do you guys deal with grumpy developers who don't listen? Sorry, I can't bring it up. I didn't get a chance to set up the social thing today, so I'm just reading the messages.
Well, we try to we try to use humor and we try to involve the developers. And I don't know if you do this, we try to involve the developers early on, not so early that they're sitting with users, quite frankly. But once we start going, if we get a couple of questions, we'll go to the developers and say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And we try to engage those developers. Now, sometimes, again, they go overboard and, you try to do your best. There are ways around that. You have to make friends with somebody above him, above that developer, the developer's manager, or, you have to get a consensus from the users that won't be acceptable to do that a certain way. And the users are signing off on requirements, obviously. We tended to do more technical specs. So we would actually, Kathleen would work up comps, and it was a little more tighter that way. And the developers, we would engage with them again on what they thought of, and, 3 or 4 options, and we'd go with a certain one that we all agreed on. But I won't tell you it's not difficult. It's just as difficult as working with project managers, and trying to get enough time to do your requirements the right way, where all the focus is usually, downstream, and then you have a ton of errors and a ton of misses. But the way to do it is try to be friendly with the developer up front, and get him engaged early on. If he's a megalomaniac or she's a megalomaniac,
or her,
Kathleen or her, there definitely are quite a few female developers now. But we just have to work it, and you have to put them in. If it doesn't work in a group setting, then try it in a one-on-one setting. And if the one-on-one settings aren't working, make sure you have all your ducks in a row and bring him or her into a bigger meeting to say, this is, how we'd like it designed, or this is how we see it functioning. Are there any issues with that? And have him give you back those issues and make sure we have answers to those issues.
Yeah, that's key. And also make sure that for some of the super technical ones that are maybe not as comfortable speaking business, try as much as you can to speak in their language. Now, you probably can't go 100% that way, which is fine, but the more you can talk to them in the words that they're used to working with, and the more that you can help them to see that you are taking into account their point of view and their issues, because their issues are valid, and that's a lot of the problem most of the time, is that they're not feeling heard, or they think that the business doesn't understand the technical issues, and sometimes that's true. So it's our job to make sure that they understand that, well, yes, okay, maybe not all the business understands your issues, but I understand why you're saying this, this, and this, and can you maybe make some suggestions about ways that we can make this work better or make it easier on you or whatever? Not promising that you're going to be able to do that, but at least starting that conversation so that at least they are starting to feel more involved, which is why we involve them so early. We found that that's been very successful. Definitely not with users, but from the point after that on, unless you have a very technical user audience, which is certainly a possibility, but in that case, you're probably going to get lost in a sea of technobabble. But for most of the cases where you're not working with a highly technical audience for your product, you probably want to bring the developers in just after that, unless you have the rare developer who can actually flip both sides, and they do exist.
They do.
Does that help, Sandeep, or is there a specific scenario that you're seeing that you would like to talk about? Just let us know. It'll take a second to catch up because there's a little bit lag here, but feel free to let us know if that did not help you.
And for the same reason, we would also involve QA early on as well. QA oftentimes will pick up a lot of things because they're used to testing all the time that, quite frankly, a business analyst may or may not think of, the users may or may not think of, the developers may or may not think of. So we pull them in about, the same time or a little bit after the developers as well, just to make sure we've got everybody covered.
And they can be
You can do that with data,
helpful.
DBAs.
Right, yeah. Because those are people that are also going to see the connection points that maybe nobody's even told you about yet. Or maybe, you think that, this connection works, this way, and they know it doesn't. So they'll let you know that. So that's a huge resource. And it's not only just politically smart to bring them in, but it's helpful for your project to bring them in as early as possible. They don't need to be in every meeting maybe, but definitely keep them in the loop, keep them, up to date. because they're a tremendous resource and will save you a lot of time down the road.
All
And
right.
Sandeep
And
said
there's
that was
also
perfect, and said
oh,
thank
there
you.
you go. Great. There's also the other issue too that sometimes developers are not advanced developers, and they get a little nervous because they can't do something, so they will try to push you a certain way of how they can do it. So you just got to be aware of that. So the more technical you know without getting too technical, the better off you are at finding those type of things.
Yeah, the whole reason to
Okay.
speak in their language a little bit is just so that it reinforces the fact that you do understand, that you're not just saying the words, that you actually do comprehend. Because if you're using their
Right.
terminology correctly, that takes away some of that, oh, they don't really know what they're talking about problem.
Right. You can't pull the wool over our eyes all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And
And step
Sandeep says,
five.
oh, lucky Sandeep. He says he, she, sorry, I don't know which, says our QAs are fun. That's really good. Fun
Yeah.
QAs. I like that.
Well,
Sometimes I find individual QAs that are fun. I've never found like a whole group of them that are fun. So that's a huge win. Congratulations on that.
yeah, that's great.
All right. So
Okay.
before we go on to the last one here, I just want to remind everybody that you can find us and keep track of us and stay up to date by visiting our website or going to Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, and following us. Or you can join our mailing list where we also send out updates on what we're doing, the shows we're doing, the content we're going to be covering, and all that kind of good stuff. And it's all free, and we don't spam you. So feel free to join the party. All right, you ready to dive in on the last one?
And I agree to disagree, which is step number 5.
Yeah.
Now, these are just some, steps and guidelines. Obviously, there's a lot more to conflict resolution that we could write a book on, but you have to know when to agree to disagree. So you want to be respectful of everyone, obviously, and you want to provide a way for everyone to gracefully back down out of a situation. And you can do that by saying, well, let's just agree to disagree for this point, but continue to work on a solution. Sometimes you just have to stop and just say, okay, we're just going to leave this alone for a little while and agree to disagree. Make sure you get that in writing, that when we're doing requirements that, something was suggested and declined, so that, you have that, so that it was cognitively thought of, somebody thought of it, and maybe the other party doesn't agree with it. So, and that's fine. We've gone ahead with many requirements where there were some dissidents that said, you know what, I don't agree with this. And it's sort of that 80-20 rule. If 80% of the people agree, then we're going to move forward, and we're going to note that you disagree. But you can't let it stop the process entirely, because it just slows everything down way too much. But again, do it in a way that's respectful. And if it's a major conflict with two people, just let them ease out and say, okay, that's the easiest way to do it. I'm going to agree to disagree. And then there's it's noted, and it's no hard feelings. Well, it might be hard feelings, but you move forward anyway. And that sort of wraps up. Oh, look at Kathleen. She's already smiling like a Cheshire cat. Like, oh, what are you going to say about agree to disagree?
Well, no, it was that
Oh.
last part that made me smile. It was and everybody, moves along and stays
Yeah, well,
adult about it.
I'm a very positive person.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we hope
and the thing is, it can happen,
Yeah,
but there are also scenarios where people then just sit back and hope that you fail,
Right.
so they can say I was right. But
That's
hopefully
right.
that you'll get them if they. It's important to remind them that okay, just because maybe you didn't win on this one, that doesn't mean that other points of yours are not being addressed. So hopefully the balance will make everybody comfortable enough that it's not going to be a long-term problem, and that you're not going to have somebody sitting back there secretly hoping you're going to fail, because that's not good for anybody. And
No,
most
but
grown-ups
eventually,
can do.
right. And eventually, the more you produce, people eventually get to know these people, that they're like either doom and gloom folks, or they're sort of passive aggressive, and they're like, well, yeah, I agree with you completely. And then when something doesn't, well, of course, I knew that was going to happen. There's always going to be those types of personalities, but you kind of hope that everybody sorts to realize that that's just their personality, and that's just the way it's going to be. So we either deal with it, or they move them out or whatever. But So why is all this important? I mean, it is basically 80% of your job to get people to agree. Once you do all that elicitation, you get all that during the elicitation process, you are getting people to agree constantly or give more information or provide potential solutions. Um, and it's going to build trust. It's going to strengthen your relationships. It's going to give people a comfortable environment to take a risk, because if you don't take a risk, you're really not making any kind of progress. You have to make mistakes. You have to take risks. So you got to do that in a very safe environment. And those 5 steps kind of give you that ability to create that safe environment where people are going to feel comfortable, that they're going to be heard, and you can agree to disagree, and we're going to move forward. So it's just putting all of those things together and understanding yourself as well, and how you would respond instead of react, I should say. Just don't fly off the handle. Just try to count to 10. Do a little meditation in your head, whatever it takes, and just try to refocus, reframe everybody, get them all back on track, and you'll be successful. And that's the first psychology of business analysis.
Yeah, that we probably have. The biggest one, or the one that most people, when you start talking about this type of thing, it's the first thing they think of, because it happens on a regular basis. People are people, and people have bad days, and so the longer your project, the more likely you are that something like this is going to pop up. Occasionally, you have a short enough one that it doesn't, but especially for the long hauls, it's going to come up at some point. And you just need to be prepared for it, so that when it happens, you can say, okay, take that deep breath and go, here's how, start to work through it in your head, and then take that approach, put it into play so that you can manage the situation and try to catch it before it gets too far out of hand, because the longer you let it go, the harder it is to manage. So you might as well just deal with it as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can even create a little sort of conflict resolution cheat sheet. So, I mean, if you're going to redirect questions, if somebody says this is what you want to do. If somebody says this is how you want to handle it. And as you go along, you'll pick up quite a few of them and how to handle certain personalities and certain types. So that's something to work on. Keep yourself a little journal on that as well. And you'll be prepared for anything.
As you're working on your stuff, to kind of think through all the possible ways that somebody might react to it, so that you're prepared for it. You've already played it out in your head that way too. And the more you start to work with a group, the more you'll start to know where those triggers lie, so that maybe you can present the material in such a way as to just avoid the issue altogether, because you're already anticipating what their concerns are going to be. So if you address them right up front, then it doesn't become a thing for them, hopefully.
Or push that trigger if you really want to. You can do that too. It can work. We would never do that, but it can be an effective way of, well, we won't go to that. That's advanced. It's like,
like anything else. You start by learning, how to manage and how to avoid it, but there's always exceptions to a rule where maybe you can use that to trigger a different conversation to get someplace that you wanted to go anyway. So
that's right.
But yes, that is advanced work.
That is advanced work.
Like 4 or 5.
So much fun. Yeah, so much fun. But we don't do that though. But not too much anyway. But anyway,
only for the greater good.
For the greater good. Happens every day. Alrighty then.
All right, so we've got one more question from Sandeep here, looking for tips for a BA in an agile environment. Anything in particular, Sandeep, that you're looking for, or just in general, working in agile? I'm not sure which way we're going. If we're looking specifically about conflict in agile, or just agile in general. So we'll give you a second to get back to us on that. And I will, let's see, I can bring up the how to find us in the meantime. So once again, just as a reminder, if we are entertaining you, providing you with good information, or otherwise triggering a need in you to keep up to date with us, you can find us on Twitter, on Instagram, Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube. We also have a website, which is thebazone.com, right there. And if all else fails and you can't get in touch with us any other way, you can always go to thebazone.com and you can watch the shows there. It's bazone.com/watch. And there's also a contact form. So if you have any questions, comments, suggestions for shows, feel free to let us know, because that's why we're here. That's why we do the show, is because we're trying to help our fellow BAs out there fighting the good fight. All right, let me bring Mara back. Okay, so Sandeep didn't get it. Oh, there it is. Ah, see, I waited just long enough. So Sandeep says we have a really fast-paced development, so too many conflicts with a bit frustrated people here and there due to speed. Okay, so it's conflict that is triggered really by stress and tight timelines.
Well, we could come at this from several approaches. In the past, when we've had extremely tight timelines, we have actually had meetings to expand those timelines. And we've been very successful, even with clients doing that. I mean, the problem with an agile environment, is you get into this sort of rhythm. Okay, let's put this quickly out there. Do we have enough time to test it? Maybe, maybe not. It causes a whole bunch of downstream issues. So the first thing we try to do is we try to reduce that release. Now, I don't know how quickly you're releasing stuff into production, but we try to slow that down a little. We've done it in the past very successfully by, doing maybe, depends on if you're doing a once a month release. I don't know if that's too fast or too slow for you. Even if it's weekly, it could be a major feature and a bunch of smaller things. And that's the way we first tried doing that and slowing that down. Usually it's very well accepted due to the fact that there is a far less redesign that has to be done because something was missed or something got screwed up because it wasn't tested completely or integrated completely. So that is the first step, to try to get them to do that. And we work with development with that, because development typically doesn't want that speed of turnaround time either. So you have to find out where that issue is coming from. Sometimes the company's just used to doing it, so they just do it and they're not even thinking about it. But it's not always great for production. It's not great for the users, not great for anyone. So that's the first thing we would do. I guess that's.
I can jump in here. There's another one that I've been using a lot lately, because not only am I working in more and more agile environments, but it seems like they're trying to speed up even the agile approach on a regular basis. So what I'm finding is when the conflicts are starting to pop up when we're having the Scrum meetings, or if there's just the disgruntled conversations in the hallway, I'm starting to see that there's a pattern of we're trying to do too much in that window. So in the next one, I usually suggest that maybe we look at a way to break up whatever we're working on into some smaller pieces. And we've had some success with that, because a lot of times the conflict is coming from the stress because of the timeline, which is what you're asking about. And by suggesting breaking it into smaller pieces, even if the timeline doesn't change, the fact that you're able to rip through those smaller pieces sometimes works better, even if it means that, people are working on things and we can't really test them, for an extra day or so because of the way that we've broken them up. The benefit of everybody's stress reducing and the conflict level dropping has paid off for us. So it's something worth trying. It may not work in all scenarios, but I have had some luck with it lately. So I'll throw it out there for what it's worth.
Mm-hmm. And if it's coming from the users, oops, hit my little camera there.
You just shifted your whole world.
I shifted my whole world. Almost knocked my whole world over. You could also involve the users as well, too. So if it's coming from the users, we meet directly with the users and we would talk about what's in a particular release, and say, what is your priority? We have to prioritize it, because there's too much going in. If it's coming from your internal customer side, you can do that as well and say, meet weekly or once a week and say, okay, we're going to put this in. What other two things can we get in there, and have them make that decision? So I don't know if that decision's coming from your development side or your user side, but just as Kathleen said, breaking it up into smaller bits, either from the development side or from have it driven from the internal customers or external customers as well. That often helps too.
Definitely.
Okay. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, Yeah, so I'm just gonna, to wrap up, I'll just run through the 5 steps that Mary walked you folks through. So step 1 was emotional awareness. Step 2 was empathy. Step 3 was finding the common ground. Step 4 was picking your battles. And step 5, my favorite, agree to disagree. Because sooner or later, you just got to move forward.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, and Sandeep said thank you again. That was perfect.
You're welcome very much. And we welcome any kind of questions from anyone. So feel free and let us know what you might be interested in. And we'll have a little session on it. So just let us know. Drop us a line. We love hearing from you. And I'm still in vacation mode, so I think I'll just go and relax a little bit. And Kathleen will probably just take a sleeping pill or something.
As you can.
I'm gonna try. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to hang with us. And we'll see you next time, thebazone.com. And next Tuesday, I forget what we're talking about, but again, it's going to be in the same thing, psychology of business analysis. And hope to see you there next week. Okay?
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you. Have a good one. Take us out, Kathleen.